I come from a conservative Christian family. All my family members were / are involved in the church and have church-based jobs. When they met my wife, they loved her and embraced her as their own. We dated for 2 years and discovered she was pregnant after we got engaged. Invitations were already given at the time, and we decided to still have the wedding on date when my wife was 5 months in. My family were furious when they found out my wife was pregnant. They asked if we even still considered having a wedding. I said why not, but they were very upset, especially Mom and Dad, who said they've always been known for their decency and good Christian values, and weren't willing to let this stain their reputation. As in my wife and I getting married while pregnant. They officially dropped out and refused to negotiate, saying it was done and I have only myself to blame for this outcome, and should move the wedding out of town. I was hurt. I tried to change their minds and checked with other members, but my brother said he had no intentions to look like a joke in front of his fellow church members and dropped out. My aunt pretended to be sick and said she may not be able to make it. She's 100% healthy. My cousin said he had business trip and stopped his wife and kids from attending, and my uncle cussed me out, torn the invitation, and kicked me out. I felt terrible with no family members of my own to support me and share my joy at my wedding. I even broke down crying after the ceremony. I haven't spoken to them for months and then got busy with my 4-week-old daughter. My cousin reached out to hand me gifts and well wishes for the birth of my daughter sent from my family. I returned everything. He sat with me on behalf of the family, saying I shouldn't have returned gifts that were from my family who want to see and hopefully be involved in my daughter's life. He said Mom's longing to meet her grandbaby and everyone else is wanting to visit soon to celebrate my daughter's life. I asked him this question. I said, wasn't my daughter the reason why the entire lot of them abandoned my wedding? He just stared grudgingly as I went on about how they treated my daughter as something to be ashamed of and hide. My daughter at some point will ask about the wedding, and I have no intentions on lying to her. He replied saying he guaranteed I got it all wrong, and no matter what goes down between us, I can never deny that my daughter is their granddaughter, / niece / etc., and they're her family. He asked that I arrange for them to visit, but I refused. He kept pressing the idea, but I shut him down. My wife says I should let them come, but I still refused. I live with my parents and my brother. It's always been a dream of my parents to adopt me and bro, our bio kids. And they had come to the decision that they want to adopt an older kid. They got matched with Jess, who is 13. Due to the current situation, she is not living with us, but we've met before and she spent a weekend with us in January. Jess, despite sometimes being sweet and kind, is very high maintenance and has a lot of anxiety and anger problems. She can go from 0 to 1,000 really quick. During her stay, she got triggered by something when we were in public. She and I went to a clothes shop and my parents were in a cafe nearby. Some guy accidentally grabbed her by her shoulder as he thought she was his daughter, and he apologized immediately and started screaming. I was the only person there, and I tried to calm her down, but she ran off. She was found, shaken, but safe, an hour later. I then got grounded as I had failed in being responsible for my sister. I said I didn't have a sister. My parents were angry about this and said that how dare I be rude about her. Don't I know how much she's been through? She's had other outbursts, but none so huge in public. She can be cold and untrusting and was very clingy to my parents. I do admire her and think she's very brave, but I don't want to live with her. My parents call Jess often. I often say hi and try to be civil and supportive, but it seems like the only thing my parents can talk about is Jess and how brave she is, and she isn't even here yet. We live in a 3-bedroom house, and my parents promised to move to a bigger one later this year. Recently, my parents broke the news to me that Jess will move into my room, and I can pick whether I want to share a room with bro or Jess. I don't want to share with either. My brother is messy, loud, and is your average 9-year-old boy, and Jess has night terrors and screams the house down. And it's enough having to open my house to her, but I value my privacy a lot and don't want her in my room, which is like my special place. I was crushed. I asked if we were still moving, and my parents were like, we like this place and have no solid plan. I freaked out and was like, you guys are forgetting you have another daughter and are too excited about the shiny new one to remember that the one you have has feelings and boundaries, and if you're changing everything I've ever known, at least I deserve to be listened to. If this is how life's going to be, I don't want to have a sister. Good to note, my room is big enough to have a wall put in, and my parents considered it a few years back. I would be happy with that. They refuse, even though we can easily afford it, because it is too much effort. My parents are offended that I'm not being welcoming towards my sister. And I'm offended that the life I knew is going to be turned upside down, and I'm not going to have the thing I value most, my privacy. I am a 35 years old female, a musician, playing gigs and at an orchestra as a violinist. Rehearsals just resumed, so orchestra is my main source of income ATM. My sister, she's 26, is a social worker, working 3 days a week, so minimal income, but she adores her job. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment, both rooms around 9-10 square meters. Using the second room as a practice room / storage for my instruments, 3 violins, 2 guitars, a digital piano, a small drum kit, and other stuff. 4 months ago my sister broke up with her BF and I offered her my spare room, temporarily. I moved most of my stuff to the living room so I could fit a small bed in there. Sis moved in, but she asked me to move more stuff to the living room. I moved pretty much everything sans the piano, to the point where the living room became uninhabitable. Then she started complaining about my violin playing, saying it gave her headaches. I told her I couldn't stop the daily practice without risking my only steady income. The arguments got worse. She told me to play only when she wasn't home, but with her work schedule I couldn't afford that. I tried switching to the electric violin, but even that can be pretty loud, so it didn't help. Several times I reminded her this was only a temporary arrangement, but she didn't seem to hear me. 2 weeks ago I arrived home to finding my piano in the bathroom, near water and humidity, because my sis needed the space for her new double bed. When I told her she can't SRSLY expect me to store my piano there, she said, "Yeah, you will just have to sell it, I guess." I got so mad I told her she has 7 days to leave, but she didn't take me seriously. For a week I only talked to her to remind her how much time she has left, but she always laughed it off, told me to stop acting like a crazy person. When the deadline came I boxed up all her stuff while she was at work, booked an Airbnb bedsit close by and drove her stuff there. She was livid but couldn't do anything but take her new keys and stay there. The following week she kept calling me with an increasingly apologetic tone, saying she shouldn't have moved my piano or bought a bed. She promised she would put more effort into finding a new place. And by the end of the week I considered most of our issues at least addressed, so I drove to help her move back. But when I was carrying the first box down, she went, "I do hope you will at least stop with the violin this time." I absolutely refused to take more of that F******ing violin. I dropped the box, wished her good luck and left. Now, 2 days later, on one hand it feels like a huge overreaction to leave my own sister literally homeless because of an argument about the violin. I know she cannot afford to stay there, but on the other hand I have no plans to allow her back here, because I feel she would just continue crossing boundaries and never leave. I have a home daycare. I like to think I'm pretty lenient, but I do have one big rule: don't make me the bad guy. I understand we might have different rules, but don't make your child resent me by not backing me up. Anyway, another rule is I don't allow outside toys or electronics. Kids can bring the stuffed animals for nap if they're sleeping on rest mats, but I don't want to be responsible if something gets broken. Years ago, I used to let kids bring whatever. Then a cheap McDonald's toy broke by accident, kid was upset and mom got mad at me. So now it's a hard rule. Most are okay with it. But I have a new kid, whose mom wanted him to bring his tablet because he needs it. I said sorry, but no. I'm not going to be responsible for it. We went back and forth, but finally she just says fine. But every morning, he's crying because she took his tablet from him in the car. She always gives me this look and says, "Miss Lucy says no tablet." I always try to say we have plenty of toys, but the kid spends the whole morning sulking. I've talked to mom, asked her to leave it at home and not even put it in the car, but she says he needs it. It's been a month and yesterday was the straw that broke the camel's back. Kid came in crying as usual. I tried my usual redirection, which didn't work. Mom was giving me a look of, "See what you did?" Then she had the nerve to say to him, "I know you need your tablet, We've talked about this before, Miss Lucy is strict. That pissed me off. I ended up telling her to take him home right then and there. She was shocked and tried to stammer. He was my first kid of the day, so there was no scene. I just handed back his backpack, said he was no longer a student of mine, and began to pack his extra clothes and the sippy cup he kept. Mom was in tears as she left. My husband thinks she was right. I'm too strict and should have broken policy instead of causing drama. There was no medical need for the tablet. It was all just that he wanted it. I'm not making a waiver for electronics. That won't stop other issues with the tablets, such as jealousy and drama, so my "don't make me the bad guy" rule has been misunderstood, partly as I worded it poorly. I don't expect blind obedience. No one has to agree with my rules. They can challenge them, to me. But to their kid, I'd rather them explain everyone has different rules and that while they're with me, things will be different. I do the same with parents who have different rules than mine. I never say they're wrong or strict. I say that we have different rules at school and to listen to mom and dad. This is also a policy for pacifiers, bottles, and potty training. I'll approach any of these milestones when you ask, but you have to be working on it at home too. The kid won't progress if they only go pee on the potty at home. And the child was not autistic or non-verbal. If he was, an exception would be made. I returned her money for the last few days of January and texted an apology for terminating without notice, and said I hope she was able to find care. She said she left him at her mom's. She also asked if there was any way I'd reconsider, and I said no. We had a long phone call and no minds were changed, but it was the ending we should have had.